Thank you, Ken. I'm happy to be with you here today.
All right. Let's begin from the most talked about thing this morning, and this is the by-election in Msambweni. Apart from the fact that it's now very obvious that ODM lost, the question that many are asking, you hit the campaign trail to campaign for the ODM candidate. What could have possibly gone wrong in Msambweni?
First, let me begin by congratulating those who have won in these by-elections. It was not only Msambweni. I think there were 5 other elections in wards all across the country, in Dabaso, in Lakeview, Naivasha, in Kisumu North, in Taita Taveta, and in Kiambu. So I want to begin by congratulating those who managed to win those by-elections, generally, wherever they were. Now, yes, ODM lost in Msambweni, but that is the game of elections. You win or you lose some. You see, there are several other factors, and I think the ODM party will talk about it sometime later after they've done the analysis. But what I really want to talk about is there's some behavior of some honorable members of parliament.
From both sides?
No, not from our side.
Okay, from the other side.
Those who are on the opponent, openly bribing voters in broad daylight. That is something that is very unethical, in my view, and it's a conduct that we should not encourage going forward in the future. But I'm not really trying to have excuses. I said that ODM lost to an independent candidate, but you also need to know that this independent candidate was actually a member of ODM. He only did not want to face the nomination exercise.
Okay.
That's why he opted to run as an independent.
The reason why there's a lot of interest in Msambweni is because you touted Msambweni as a litmus test to the referendum. In fact, in your own words, you said if ODM would lose in Msambweni, the BBI would have a problem.
And I mentioned, Ken, that we will have a problem in Msambweni. I did not talk about the BBI nationally. I just said the BBI would have a problem in Msambweni. And that's why I was actually cautioning our members. ODM won in Kilifi, in the bus ward in Kilifi. ODM won in Kisumu North ward. Our partner won in Kiambu, in Ruiru ward. Also in Taita Taveta, in Undanyi. So that cannot be taken as a litmus test for countrywide. It was only with respect to Msambweni. That's what I was talking about.
And you don't think that because I'm looking at the people who are behind this candidate that won in Msambweni, and sorry, I have to stick on Msambweni for a little bit longer. The people behind this candidate, and you've seen the kind of social media activities and support that this winner has gotten since morning, or since they announced yesterday that he's won, is an opponent that is likely to face a candidate in the presidential election. So even to them, this was an important test to them. If they could manage to win Msambweni, then it means they have really made inroads in this country.
Really, I don't think that really would be the case. They can interpret it the way they want to interpret it. In my view, people of Msambweni, first, there's this effect of COVID, and people are actually hungry and so on at this moment in time. And the turnout was low in quite a number of wards, except just 2 others. So I would say that they really are entitled to their own interpretation of the results of Msambweni.
Yes.
In our view, I don't think that you can generalize and look at this as a litmus test or a test of popularity countrywide.
Okay, so this was specific to the coast. And the question then is, do you think the popularity of ODM, because the late Suleiman Dori was a member of parliament for Msambweni and was ODM candidate from 2013, do you think this has, in a way, dented the popularity of ODM in the coast region?
I don't think so, because I've told you that the guy who won eventually.
He was a PA to Suleiman Dori.
To Suleiman Dori,
yes.
And therefore he's a member of ODM.
Okay.
So a number of people who actually voted for him are ODM members.
Okay.
Some of them have voted him because of what he did for them when he was a PA to the late Dori. Others may have voted for him because he's their relative, and so on.
Okay.
Because also, you're talking about coast. We won in the bus award in Kilifi. And this is actually following the other win which you had there also last year.
Okay.
In Kilifi. So I think it would be very wrong for somebody to try to generalize, to say that ODM is losing ground in the coast.
All right. Let's get away from the talk about Msambweni. Let's talk about COVID-19. And last week, the United Kingdom began the vaccines in the United Kingdom. We saw the US began on Monday. And long before even the vaccines were put into use, we saw Porters 43, 44, 45, Clinton, Bush, and Obama say they are going to take the vaccine on camera to foster that confidence that the vaccines indeed works. We know there is the 2 dose and the 1 dose. As Raila Odinga, and with the kind of following you have and the way COVID-19 has ravaged this country in the last 8 months or so, would you be willing, as Raila Odinga, to take this COVID vaccine in public and on camera to inject that confidence in the people of Kenya that indeed the vaccine works?
Certainly, Ken. You know, in all this, the process of development of drugs, there are always tests which have to be done. In fact, they start with guinea pigs before they begin the tests on human beings. And when successful, then they're actually licensed to be now massively taken. So I remember when I was a young boy, there was this smallpox pandemic in the country. And they introduced massive vaccination in schools and in marketplaces. And we were all vaccinated that time. And eventually smallpox was controlled. So if this vaccine is now been proved to be safe for human beings, when, for example, people like Obama are taking it, and Biden, there's no reason why I would not be ready to take this vaccine. If it will help eventually to encourage our people to take it, in order to be able to contain this pandemic.
Okay. Tying to the vaccine, the government, the Jubilee government, has been accused of bungling the way the coronavirus pandemic has been handled in the country. From where you sit, independent of the fact that you're in a dalliance with the president, from where you sit, do you think where we are today, something would have been done better, or you think they did their best with the prevailing circumstance that they had at that time?
I take issue with saying I'm dallying with the president. We have a very correct relationship with the president, which is precipitated by what transpired last time, and as a result of which we negotiated and signed an MOU, and we all swore that we are going to implement this MOU. I give advice to the government, because I'm not part of the government, as you can see, that it gives me that flexibility of being objective as an observer. But let's take this matter in context. This COVID pandemic came as an emergency, and not only in this country, worldwide. because nobody actually prepared for this pandemic. People just, I was in China myself over the New Year. Actually, I left Shanghai on the 9th of January. And there was nothing, no sign to show that this thing was going to happen. Then in February, we went for the prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. Still no signs. We came back here, and all of a sudden, this lockdown.
Wuhan erupted.
So most countries were not prepared.
Yes.
And most countries had to deal with this as an emergency. So Kenya, like other countries, was not prepared. But when it happened, the response initially, of course, was of that of panic response. And you found that there are things that were required. Not people knew that you would need things like masks, things like these protective clothing and so on and so forth. And then the only manufacturer was basically China. So the whole world was running to China. So countries were actually queuing to get these supplies. So I think the reaction of the government should be seen in that context.
Okay.
I think that they did their best. They could have done better, but I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give them a 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way, from where you sit, the way the health crisis has been handled in terms of being proactive on healthcare workers and their plight, that also is key to how the government has handled this. Because if caregivers are at risk, then it means they cannot give this care to the people who need it most. And that's one of the areas that the national government has really been faulted, and you still give them 7 out of 10.
I'm saying life is precious. And the life of health workers is fairly precious to all of us. And I never want to be defensive or answer for the government. Where they have not done well, I would always say. And I'm saying that a government has the responsibility to protect its health workers, generally, because they're in the first line of defense to save lives of our people. And I've been actually misquoted and sometimes verified for some remarks I made when I appealed to our doctors.
To go back to work, the nurses.
Because I say that, yes, the government must protect workers, but at the same time, the doctors and the nurses have also a calling. Their oath that they take is to protect life, you know, at all costs, protect their lives first, but also to protect life of human beings. And the demand that we're making, if it's justified, look at the ability of the government to meet them.
At this point.
At this point.
Yes.
So what I was saying is that I think that it is not right to down tools at the time when
they're needed most.
They're needed most.
Your comment, you say you're misquoted, it sounded a little bit insensitive to the nurses. Same person who was speaking to the nurses and making this appeal is the same person who, on the other side, is seen to be pushing BBI and the amendment, the constitutional amendment bill, which requires money, which we will talk about in a little bit. But the fact that you thought at that time the nurses were a little bit being unrealistic and insensitive, and we heard what Ojamong said about this. He said, let the BBI pass, and the context was, once it passes, we'll address all your issues in totality. But looking at Raila of yesteryears and how you would have handled that crisis at that time, perhaps they think you will have been more proactive in pushing for their rights, rather than vilifying them for downing their tools when they're needed most.
I did not vilify them. I did not. I basically just cautioned that, hey, there are lives of innocent Kenyans which risk being lost if you down your tools. So I just told them, sympathize with these Kenyans as you make demands. You know, I have been in government myself. You know, I've run a government. And when we had this kind of crisis, I would call. Like I have a situation where I've negotiated with doctors and nurses. I've negotiated with the lecturers, the university,
teachers,
and teachers also. You see, and at times I used to tell them, this is what is available in the kitty. So we cannot get it from anywhere else. This is what's available, and this is what we're ready to share with you people. So I think that is the best way to handle a situation like this.
Why didn't we hear your voice when the doctors were advocating for PPEs? Why didn't we get the same vigor, this statement, when they were calling for PPEs, and not only PPEs, but they were calling for even their insurance? Why don't we hear you talk about it as much as you talked about when they downed their tools, and push for it and advise the government indeed this should happen in the context of what's happening to KEMSA?
Ken, I was not really addressing this issue. I was asked a question by one of the journalists.
Okay.
So I just responded to that question. I did not call a press conference to talk about this issue.
But you would have called a press conference to talk about the issue of doctors, like you usually call press conferences, and push for their rights.
I have actually talked to the government about this matter.
Privately?
Yes, I've talked to the government. They know it. Told them that I believe that this is necessary, do A, B, C, D.
Okay.
Okay?
The problem with that is the Raila that we knew would call a press conference and talk to the government through the press conference.
Yes, I would talk to the government because at that time they were not hearing. You see, then I would talk to the government and say, this is our position.
Yes.
But as you know, right now, we have an avenue. I can pick up phone and talk to the president and tell him, Mr. President, this is not going right. Do ABCD. So that's the difference. It's not that I'm not proactive.
Okay. There's a different avenue of talking to them.
Yeah, I'm very proactive.
During his speech at Jamhuri Day, the president steered clear the nurses crisis. You were there. What do you make of that? Because he didn't also address it directly. Yeah.
But see, that is the president and his people who write his speech writers. Because
it's off the cuff.
He was reading a speech for that day, and it dealt with a number of issues.
Okay.
I don't know whether it was an omission. But he addressed several other
issues, yes, on healthcare, and outlined the benefits and the milestones we've made. Lastly, I'm taking a break in 30 seconds. The president promised us so many months ago, about 3 months and a half ago, that within 21 days, there will be investigations into the KEMSA heist or corruption within the KEMSA institution. And within 21 days, he wanted that results. You haven't been heard speaking about this. It's more than 100 days later. Why are you not speaking about it? Why are you not asking where is this investigation? Who stole the medicine? Who stole the PPEs? Who made money out of it?
You see, according to the information that is now available in public, is that there are equipment worth billions of shillings, which have been lying there at the warehouses of KEMSA. And I was told that they had not been released. Now I'm told that they are being released.
Okay.
But as you know, a number of investigations have been ongoing. I've been seeing the Public Investment Committee of Parliament doing some investigations. I'm seeing the committee of the Senate doing some investigations. And of course, the other ones which are being done by professional bodies like the DCI and the EACC. Of course, are never made public. But in my view, I think that we need to go back to where we came from. You see, when I was a member of Parliament, and we had the Public Accounts Committee and Public Investment Committee, these committees would deal with audited accounts. The auditor in general would first carry out professional investigations and then come up with a clear report that who was the culprits. In this particular case, this matter should really be first investigated by the professional bodies which have got the instruments to carry out proper investigation. That is DCI and EACC.
Yes.
And then hand over a report to Parliament. Then now that's when Parliament is justified in carrying out its investigation. But here where you find the professionals are going on, carrying out investigation, no report has been produced.
So that's where the challenge lies. Because
basically laymen now invite people and full camera view, just a showmanship, in my view. So that way you really actually interfere with proper investigations.
All right. The former Prime Minister stays with us because we still have a lot to talk about. We want to talk about the handshake and we want to talk about the BBI plus the economy. So we still have a lot to talk to you about. But at this moment, we take a short break. Remember, we are on KTN News. We are viewers on KTN Home. You can stay with us, or if you want to still continue this conversation, keep it KTN News. We will be right back to talk to the former Prime Minister about a lot of other issues. And I know you are very interested in the subversion of people's will. Today, the Senate began its sitting investigating Mike Mbuvi Sonko. We'll talk about that also. So,
we are not part of the government. And you will see that on a number of critical issues, our members of parliament have been fairly critical when things don't go right. And also talk also. So it is not that opposition voice is missing. Okay? It is just that you can do opposition also in a different way. What is called the constructive opposition, where you just don't oppose for the sake of opposing, but you also offer constructive solutions or suggestions how things should be done. Okay, so I can talk to the Minister for Roads and tell him do ABCD. You see, I can talk to the Minister of Health. I can talk to the Minister of Education. I can talk to the Minister of Agriculture or Labor, and so on and so forth. So the circumstances are the ones that have actually changed. Yeah.
All right. But you know your voice is louder and more powerful than any member of parliament from your party or coalition would. And people will take you more seriously as opposed to when members of parliament speak.
Yes, I know, but I always give them guidance how to behave, or issues to raise, which are not going right. And they usually raise those issues in parliament. See, parliament is the platform where those issues are raised. I myself, sometimes when I get an opportunity at a public function, I will talk about certain issues. Sometimes I call press conferences up here and talk on some critical issues generally. So it's not that we have been silent. We have not been silent.
You've just been speaking, but not as loud as we would expect because of the kind of engagements that you say you do. Have you heard this say that Capitol Hill has become a laundromat? Have you heard that say?
A laundromat?
Yes, where people who have problems in this country, who have challenges, who are being haunted for one thing or another, and for the sake of this conversation, I'll call them sinners, come here to be washed. Once they meet Raila Odinga, they are cleansed. Have you heard that saying?
I have not heard. I have not heard, and if it was said, I would say it would be very untrue, because I don't have a laundry machine here. So I don't know how.
I think what they mean is most of those people that we have seen for one reason or another being investigated, some of them run to Capitol Hill and they have meetings here, and when they leave, somehow what they did goes away, or the investigations are hushed, or they are put on the back burner or on the shelves, and they take a little bit longer to be investigated or to be prosecuted. If one is haunted and wanted out of office, when they come to Capitol Hill, they talk to Raila Odinga, they'll find a way around it, and they're usually safe. So that's what they mean by Capitol Hill being a laundromat.
I don't know, and if you have any particular person in mind, you can actually mention.
Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru visited you just before her impeachment motion.
No, actually, Anne Waiguru visited. Well, she asked to come and see me, and we just talked generally. I mean, we did not talk about her impending impeachment. And as you know, that I don't dictate to members of the Senate. She went before the Senate just like anybody else, and she was tried, and eventually the Senate made a decision I have myself been complaining that the investigative arm, the prosecutorial arm of the government are not working in consonance, and that this is actually interfering with the justice system in the country. I've also been talking about the judiciary, which in my view sometimes is also an impediment to dispensation of justice in the country. Like, you have so many of these injunctions which are being had. You've got criminals taken to court, immediately given bond, bail, bond, and then the cases are never listed for hearing for years and years. So our justice system is not working properly. And I'm myself a person who is most pained at what is happening in this country. So I would be the last person to try to cleanse people who have been accused of corruption. See, I would be the last person to try to defend the culprits of corruption.
Okay.
Yeah.
The others say that perhaps you have, or you may have heard, is that if Raila Odinga that we knew was sitting on the other side and not signed this agreement with the President Uhuru Kenyatta, even the announcement of COVID numbers would be different coming from here. In essence, what they're saying is there's some voice that is missing. Perhaps we would be told the truth that we don't know about what's happening in this country.
You know, the information I've told you, I have sometimes, I share with the government. Maybe I should be sharing it also with the public, but
yeah, because that's what you used to do.
Generally, then I just used to. There was no communication between me and the government. I would just talk out and say, A, B, C, D has happened. This is the evidence, and do something about it.
Okay.
You see,
are they proactive, or would you give Kenyans an example of one big thing that really bothered you, that you brought to the attention of the president, and it was acted upon to your satisfaction?
There have been a number of issues that I can't really begin to itemize now.
Okay.
The issues when there were floods in the country, and I talked about it, and some action was taken. There's been this locust invasion of the country, and told him how the government need to prepare itself to deal with this pandemic issues was coming, and something was done about it. And there have been other issues in, for example, Parliament, for example. I've been very pained at the way that some members of Parliament have been behaving. And again, I think the president has taken some action. I've also talked to my own members in their PG to advise them how they can behave themselves. You know, this whole idea of, for example, MCAs taking trips in those before the COVID to go benchmarking in Dubai or in India or in South Africa and so on, this excessive...
You spoke about it,
trips,
and
yeah.
we saw the austerity measures that were taken.
Trips, a lot of wastage.
Okay.
And so there are a number of issues.
Okay. Okay, so you talked to the government, that has changed. I want to talk about the BBI process, where we began and where we are today with the amendment bill. And it's obvious, since you signed that agreement with President Uhuru Kenyatta at Harambee House and the meetings preceding that, we have seen his general management of the country really easy, and you have, in effect, people think that he has an easy time thanks to you and the fact that now you have an alternative way of addressing these things. In your view, if you look at how you have been engaging with President Uhuru Kenyatta, is it really true that it's because of you that President Uhuru Kenyatta has really, really had an easy time governing this country in the last 2 years, mostly, post the 2017 election?
Ken, you know, we went through a very heated campaign. And you remember what transpired when we went to the Supreme Court and what the Supreme Court did. And then thereafter, you saw the kind of bloodshed and lives that were being lost in our streets and so on. And it was not sustainable. And we were actually on the brink of basically splitting this country into two, taking it to Somalia, for example, or Yemen. And that was not in the best interest of the people of this country. That really is what informed this decision to negotiate and then the handshake. Now, first and foremost, the handshake was predicated on the nine points,
yes,
which are contained in the MOU. If, as a result of this, now the temperatures went down, this is now the consequences of it. But Uhuru also needs an environment in which he can be able to implement his agenda, his legacy agenda, which, in my view, would be beneficial to the people of this country. You know, for them to be able to benefit from those. Like we're talking about the Big Four agenda. In my view, you know, they were also part of our NASA manifesto.
Okay.
You know, the issue of affordable housing, issue of universal health care, issue of manufacturing, and then issues of affordable housing generally. And they may not be able to achieve it because, as you know, within the Jubilee system itself, there are saboteurs inside the government. But I say I never want to get involved because I'm not part of that government. If they were working together as one team, they will achieve much more. But as you can see, you've got a faction inside Jubilee which is actually pulling out and disowning and trying to apportion blame all on one other half of Jubilee. In my view, that is what is to a certain extent responsible for impeding the process of implementation of their program.
Okay. I'd want to talk about that extensively, the fact that they're not working together, because you have been blamed squarely for that since the handshake. They have said you went into the Jubilee Party to split it. We have members of parliament who've said that, Moses Kuria and the rest. We had the DP himself who said, Mwezi nifukuza ODM, you come to Jubilee, also chase me away. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to go back to BBI. And apart from this legacy document that you and President Uhuru Kenyatta want to leave this country, what is in it for you specifically as Raila Odinga? What is in this handshake and BBI and the amendment of the Constitution specifically for you as Raila Odinga?
It was never meant to be something for Raila Odinga as a person. Raila Odinga is just an individual. We are addressing national issues which affect the country generally. So we were really addressing posterity, and therefore we cannot atomize and say this is beneficial to Raila Odinga. Because Raila Odinga is only here today, tomorrow Raila Odinga will not be there. So we were not that selfish to look at ourselves. That's why we said we don't even want to talk about the 2022. We said the 2022 is an event which will come and go, but Kenya will remain. And that's why we said we want to create an enabling environment which will enable this country to realize the dream that the founding fathers of our nation had coined. You know, if you see our national anthem talks of justice, our shield and defender, but then the most important one is that plenty be found within our borders. that plenty was not going to drop like manna from heaven. It was going to be as a result of the sweat and toil of the people of Kenya. So to create an enabling environment through which Kenyans themselves can be able to create that wealth.
Okay.
You see?
Yet, it's not meant for an individual. Yet, anyone who's watched you in the last few months since the first BBI report was presented, and who has seen you hit the campaign trail or the promotion trail and those rallies, it sounds as though this is a do or die for Raila Odinga and the proponents of the amendment to the Constitution. Yet you tell me there is nothing specific in it for you. So you are ready to go all this length just for Kenyans and nothing specific for Raila Odinga?
You see, if Kenyans succeed or benefit, Raila has benefited. You see, remember, we're running to be able to take over the running of the government. That's why we went into competitive elections last time. Then somehow that did not happen because of circumstances which were beyond our control. But then we said that let us beat a retreat and see how we can rectify this thing for the future so that we don't have a repeat of what we have been through. You know, it is Lenin who said, 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, we are still advancing. See, so it was what we call a retreat in order to advance. And advancing, we now want to advance together. And that's why we said we move. And that's why I've been giving this analogy of trying to cross the river Jordan to get into Canaan and building bridges. And that we're building these bridges jointly, myself and President Uhuru Kenyatta. And that is why we brought this BBI. And BBI is addressing several issues,
yes,
as you have seen. It's talking about the youth empowerment. It's talking about empowerment of our women folk in the country. It's talking about realization of our dream generally, the issues of public health. You see, we are talking about how health system can be managed. That's why we're talking about health commission.
Yes.
There's a youth commission. You see, and then we also talk about an ombudsman with the judiciary to improve the service delivery in the judiciary.
An external person, which has caused a lot of uproar, the proposal of ombudsman.
Yes, ombudsman, you know. So all this, and even addressing the issue of electoral justice, the IEBC, remember we had talked about its composition, but that is an issue that can be dealt with through legislation, not necessarily in the Constitution. So this, in my view, if we realize what is here, because people are only highlighting a few items in
that interest them.
It must interest them.
Yes.
But you see, the thing is, the issues which are administrative, which need to be dealt with administratively, there are the issues which are legal, which require legislation, and those will go to Parliament, and already the bills have been drafted. And then there are those few which require constitutional amendment.
Yes.
And these are the ones which are contained in the bill.
Okay. That's progressive if you look at it like that. Yet most of the things that are contained in the amendment, the bill, even the larger BBI report, are things that already exist. Even the things that you mentioned, they're very specific words that already exist. And that's why there's an argument that Kenya doesn't need new laws because we already have laws. But that's a conversation for another day. You're against choice referendum. It's been proposed by someone. And the way we are not going to do choice referendum right now. I'm looking at how we are progressing now after the signatures were obtained and they were presented before the IBC. The first thing the IBC said is we don't have a budget. If we had a budget, then we'll verify the signatures. Is this a cloud that is likely to hang on this process now that the IBC is saying that?
That basically tells you why we don't have confidence in this IBC. Because you see, these people are earning a salary on a monthly basis. You've got a whole secretariat there consisting of commissioners and head of department and so on. They're earning a salary on a daily basis. Elections are only held once in every 5 years. In between, sometimes there are these by-elections, like you had recently in Msambweni and these other wards. Ask yourself, what do they do on a day-to-day basis?
Monday to Friday.
And they have got those people, and they've been given signatures. Why do we need money to verify signatures?
What if this money is not availed because Chebukati says they don't have money to do that?
I'm saying, what do they do if they're not verifying signatures?
You're saying they need to use what they have to verify the signatures.
Yes.
One of the major calendar events for the IBC that should have been done earlier in the year is boundaries review, and there was no money availed for the same. There was no money for that. Then this referendum comes, and now they have to look for the money. They have to get it for this. And yet the major activity like boundaries review, they didn't have money for this.
Just saying, I don't know whether they asked for that money.
It should have been budgeted for.
They have a budget line.
Yes.
And I don't know how much. But the thing is that they are very, very extravagant in their demands. And
in terms of cost?
In terms of costs.
Okay.
I gave an example of electoral costs in other parts of the world. The United States has just done a general election. And in the United States, an election costs 50 cents, 50 US cents per ballot.
What is the comparison here?
Last year is over $7 per ballot.
700 shillings per ballot.
You see what it is here? Yeah, in Europe, it's about 70 US cents in some countries. In the most expensive is $1 per ballot. But in some African countries, it's where it goes up. Nigeria, it goes up to about $5 per ballot. But here it is $7 per ballot. You see, an example. In the last elections, we had 17 million people registered. Call it now 20 million. If it were $1 per ballot, and that's because I talked for 2 billion shillings. If it were $1 per ballot, it would cost us $20 million for the 20 million registered voters. And that is 2 billion Kenyan shillings. Yes. They themselves tell you out of blues, we need
42 billion.
See?
Okay.
14 billion. The last elections, they spent 42 billion. Okay? And then in the repeat presidential elections, which we did not participate in, they have spent another 12 billion. You see, when they were not even printing any new ballot papers because all the candidates which had participated in the first round were then forced to come also and participate in the repeat.
So you think they're really extravagant in their demands?
Very extravagant.
Even in the verification of signatures, you see that extravagance.
Yes.
They're not the only ones speaking about lack of funds. I'll quote Ukuri Atani, the Treasury CS, on December 2nd, who said, supporting the budget and preventing the economy from crashing is our main priority. We borrow to support the budget because revenue is either limited or not there. I want to be honest, and I will not be honest if I say everything is okay. We are in a state never witnessed before. That's Ukuri Atani.
That is true. Because as you know, the economy has not been working. You remember the lockdowns which you were forced to introduce for a very long period of time. So people were working only half the time, most of the times. But this has not only happened in Kenya. It's happened to many countries in the world. It's all over the world. The USA is going through a depression right now. The same thing in many countries in Europe. But that has not stopped them from doing what has to be done. The USA has just done a general election. Tanzania next door here did a general election just last month. Ghana has just done a general election and so on and so forth. So what you're saying is that you cannot say that you cannot do a referendum because the economy is doing badly.
Okay.
Okay.
They should find the money somewhere.
I'm sure the money is available somewhere.
The money is available.
The IBC must be brought down to earth.
Okay.
And come up with realistic figures of what it's going to cost to do
the
referendum.
referendum.
Yes.
All right. When does your agreement with President Uhuru Kenyatta expire? Post referendum, post his term? When does it expire? Your agreement with President Kenyatta?
We'll do a referendum, and then we'll start the implementation phase of what has come out of the referendum. Okay, so basically that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. President Uhuru Kenyatta, during his Jamhuri Day celebration, he made a very good case for an expanded executive. You have spoken about it, the winner takes it all, and all that. I'm just wondering, again, this is a question I promised to come back to when I asked you what is in it specifically for Raila Odinga. Would you, once this is over and done with, would you want to run for president again?
You see, first, we had said ourselves that we don't want to talk about 2022. And I said that I will not talk about Raila Odinga running for presidency. Okay? What you am interested in at the moment is to ensure that what we agreed on is actually properly implemented.
That's why I went ahead of you and say, would you? Afterwards, everything is done. Let's best case scenario.
Please spare me that. I don't want. I've been through that. I don't want to answer that question. I'm not talking about another election.
Okay. You have spoken, although specifically you said Raila Odinga doesn't have to be president.
Yes.
But we have to get a good president. I'll leave your conversation and the people of Kenya, but I'll go to your brother, Oburu Odinga, who said they now have the system. That's what they've been lacking because they've been winning the election.
Forget about what Oburu Odinga says. Those are his views.
Atandi said also.
The views, individual views.
Okay. When you said, I don't have to be president, right? So long as we get a good president.
Yes.
You said, I don't have to.
Yes.
You don't have to, but if it comes, I can be, but I don't have to.
I don't have to be president of this country. You see, I'm not actuated by the desire to be a president. If we can get a good system and a good president, I will be very happy.
You'll be happy with that?
I'm very, very happy.
You said somewhere Baba hajachoka. What did it mean? In reference to this, you said Baba hajachoka.
If kama nimechoka, and a day will come, I will just go out there and tell Kenyans, I'm now taking a walk from public life. And let other people continue with it.
Okay. You have really, we mentioned this, you have really, the stance you've taken since the handshake has really helped President Kenyatta govern this country, and it's been peaceful. We've spoken about it. What if President Kenyatta wakes up in 2022 and endorses you?
We said we don't want to talk about the 2022. We don't know what is going to happen then. So I know President Kenyatta will not answer this question differently from the way I'm answering it. We are just dealing with these issues as it were.
Yes.
Yeah, but you talked about this expanded executive.
Yes.
And some people are saying that is adding the costs, or you are just creating jobs for the boys. I disagree.
The people on the table.
With that, that view.
Yes.
Because as you know, we have had a similar structure. We had in the Grand Coalition government, we had a position of a president, a vice president, a prime minister, and 2 deputy prime ministers.
Yes.
And that, everybody agrees, was actually one of the best government this country has ever had. Because you see, people actually mistake my relationship with Kibaki. In that Grand Coalition government, we were partners, in the sense that Kibaki produced half of the government and they produced half in the cabinet. So we were sharing as equal partners.
Yes.
You see, which is a very different relationship which is now envisaged in this
amendment. Yes.
Because now you're going to have the president as a chief executive. Then you have got a prime minister who works with the president. You see? But the president is the chief executive. Okay? The prime minister will, because we have agreed that you need government in parliament. Okay? The executive, which has been missing. Because of that, now you find that members of parliament have to invite cabinet secretaries
to come to parliament
to committees, and this wastes a lot of time of the executive.
Okay.
So here, the ministers are going to be a big chunk of them are going to be members of parliament.
Yes.
Okay, and therefore their salaries are going to be passed and foremost.
So there'll be no extra.
No
for
extra.
Them. Okay.
Except just allowances for doing the executive work.
Okay.
So unlike now, you recruit them from outside, and you have to pay them fully and house them. This is not going to be, so it's actually going to be cheaper.
Okay.
This one than the one we are running right now.
Okay.
But then the other thing is that, like in our case, when the prime minister is coordinating the work of the executive, the work becomes much easier and more efficient. The president can concentrate more on state matters and then chair the cabinet. The prime minister chairs all the cabinet subcommittees which deal with day-to-day things and then hand over, give a report to the president.
Yeah.
And then also it's present in parliament to answer questions.
Okay.
And because of this, he needs two assistants, one who assists him with parliamentary work, another one who assists him with the executive work.
So to you, this is well thought out.
Very well thought out.
Very well thought about. Yes. The fear, I promised to talk about this, I'll come back to it. What happened when you had a handshake with President Kenyatta, you saw the fear was real. You saw how the other side, that the splinter group of Jubilee or the other faction talked about Raila splitting Jubilee, coming into Jubilee. So I promised to talk about this. But the question that I really want to ask is, when you are in ODM, one of the people that you worked really close with and who really supported you in your role as the Prime Minister, Agriculture Minister then, was William Ruto. You worked well with him. You also worked with him in the KANU government when you joined KANU. Is it a far-fetched idea that if anything, everything allowing, you could actually work with William Ruto again? Because the game of politics changes, and the only thing that changes in politics perhaps the ideology, but the politicians most of the time remain the same. So would you still work with William Ruto, every factor constant?
I mean, they say that politics makes of sometimes strange bedfellows. But I'm saying we worked with William Ruto before. In fact, you're saying that we chased him from ODM. We did not. He's the one who left ODM.
After the investigation into the maize scandal and all that. Yes.
But the investigation of maize scandal was not in any way a personal issue. Because it was real that we had imported maize, and most of this maize had not been properly handled by those who were in charge. And he was the one who was
the agriculture minister at that time.
Mm-hmm. And we appointed PricewaterhouseCoopers, which carried out investigations and produced a report. And it was in implementation of that report that I interdicted. I did not sack him. I just interdicted him to allow for more detailed investigations. And of course, my partner said I did not consult him, which was also being very economical with the facts. But the matter ended there. But then thereafter, of course, he left, and he had a right to leave.
Yes.
Where I took an issue was when they went to say that I'm the one who took their name to ICC.
Okay.
They knew that me and Kibaki, took a bill to Parliament.
Yes.
To establish a tribunal,
local or international. We remember that debate.
And they're the ones who refused.
Yeah.
Remember,
because they didn't trust the local system.
They
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
we don't want any local thing here. Let's go to the Hague.
Yes. Don't be vague. Go to the Hague.
Don't be vague. Go to the Hague.
Yeah, we remember that.
I mean, eventually now in the Hague, I was the one being accused as the one who had taken them to the Hague.
Okay, so the simple answer is you have worked before, everything constant, nothing stops you from working with the deputy president in future.
Circumstances will conspire.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. Looking at the Jubilee government, I want you to divorce yourself completely from the handshake and your current friendship with President Uhuru Kenyatta, and don't think about 2018 post-2017 election. How would you rate them? Just a simple answer, 1 to 10. How would you rate their performance of the Jubilee government?
The Jubilee government, I think in the last, because this is their second term.
Yeah, this is the second term.
The first term, I would give them 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10, first term.
Because
okay.
I think they were so preoccupied with the ICC case.
Okay.
And I think
you're giving excuses for them.
No, I've just understood. I've just studied them. I was just studying from outside.
But that's excuses for them. Just rate them.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
I'm not giving excuses. I'm saying that's where this idea of war chest came. And I think that is when this idea of corruption ballooned.
Okay.
You know, we had actually tried to tame it with Kibaki, okay? But it reared its ugly head bigger in the first term of Jubilee.
Okay. So 4 out of 10. Yes. I don't want you to rate the second term, the 2 years they have been there. Probably we'll rate that when we have another interview, probably in 2 years. Yes. But 4 out of 10, there's a specific reason I'm asking you for that. I want to talk about one more issue, then I'll go back to that specific issue. I want to talk about the subversion of people's will exercised in the ballot. You've seen what's happening in the county of Nairobi. Mike Mbuvi Sonko first saying NMS comes in. Right now he's being impeached today. The Senate was having its first hearing of his case. From where you sit and looking at the BBI, would you probably recommend, looking at the situation in totality happening in Nairobi, would you recommend that Nairobi is abolished? We do what Washington, for example, has done, taxation without representation, or a metropole, so that we forget about Nairobi being a county, forgetting about what the BBI has because it's been retained. But from where you sit and with hindsight, would you recommend such a thing for Nairobi County?
Certainly can. That was really our view. But in the end, we basically surrendered to what you can call populist idea.
That we retain Nairobi as a county, seat of power.
But my view is that it will be much neater, because this is the capital of the country. So the national government should have a say in running. Like you see, Washington, D.C., does not have a governor.
Okay.
They have a mayor.
Yes.
Who is elected. And even in our own independent constitution, when you had the Majimbo constitution, we had the regions which were headed by presidents. But Nairobi was headed by a mayor.
Okay.
It was called extraterritorial region or province, extraterritorial province. Abuja is another example. So in my view, if you came up with the Nairobi metropolitan, and then divide Nairobi into boroughs, like London.
Yes.
You know, London has got boroughs with mayors, and then you have got Lord Mayor, who is now the head of the Greater London. The service delivery is much more efficient that way.
Okay, so you would advocate for that, but they didn't. We see what the BBI has. Still talking about the counties, we have seen what the Jubilee government has done in their counties. Whenever issues of draft, this tied with what's happening to Sonko. You've seen what the Jubilee has done with their sides, and I'm looking at Embu, what happened to Embu. We saw it went all the way to the Senate. We saw Professor Chepkonyi in Kericho, Kiambu County, Waititu. Now Nairobi is happening, and we also saw Kirinyaga. However, the same allegations have been made about counties that are strong behind ODM. It's been made about Migori County, Busia, Mombasa, Siaya, and Homa Bay. This is attributed to weak oversight, probably from the counties. But what do you attribute it to? Because we see how Jubilee has been proactive in handling issues from their strongholds, and how ODM has been handling issues from their strong. In fact, I don't remember any that has ended up in the Senate.
Yeah, but what we do is we actually usually create a task force to deal with some of these.
As ODM?
As ODM.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have been very, very proactive in this. We had issues in Homa Bay. We sent a team there.
Okay.
We had Kisumu. Last time in the last
when Prof wanted to dissolve it in the county.
Yes. And we were, and even recently Migori. Remember, we summoned the governor and the MCAs here to Nairobi. And eventually we managed to resolve the crisis in Migori because, the governor also had these other issues which are in court. But we wanted to see that the county is actually working.
Okay, so there's no protection of your strongholds. You actually have a mechanism for dealing with it.
Yes.
We have 2 years to go. If there are issues that come out of any of these counties, are you assuring the people who are watching that there is no protection that comes from Capitol Hill to any of the counties that are behind ODM?
Not at all. In fact, we do have a disciplinary committee, which is fairly active.
Okay.
And if there is any case of mismanagement or any case of indiscretion or discipline, the parties that are involved are usually subjected to disciplinary
measures. Yes. All right. Finally, former Prime Minister, I'd like to conclude with this. The national debt, just briefly, does it give you sleepless nights when you look at the national debt?
Yes, the national debt is basically a factor for concern in the country. The issue is not the debt per se. Mm-hmm. The issue is the ability to repay, because each and every country has got debts. In fact, if you look at this debt, the so-called debt crisis in Africa, is sometimes blown out of context. Because if you take the entire debt of African countries, they are not even equivalent to the debt of a country like Belgium or Netherlands.
The entire Africa?
Yeah.
Belgium is still bigger?
Yes.
Okay.
But the thing is that how do you manage the debt? Because you need to borrow sometimes to be able to invest. Did you properly invest the money that
in order to pay it back?
So that is what creates the ability to pay back. Okay.
All right.
There's some projects which have been overpriced. Like you see, if you take the SGR, we awarded it at 2.7 billion when we were in government with Kibaki. But then it went up to 3.5 to 4. It's ended up at 4.3 billion. Okay. Overpriced. So you ask yourselves, where did we borrow and where did we go wrong?
Okay.
Where did the rent begin to beat us?
So this worries you a lot?
Yes.
This worries you, and obviously we've spoken about this. I'd like to know what, for example, your plan would be to get out of this debt, investment, or otherwise it will be your answer. But now that you're worried, looking at it, you have a period of which you can correct this. If Raila Odinga would be the president of this country, if you would contemplate that post what's happening right now, are you worried about the kind of country you will inherit and the kind of work you will do to get it out of this debt?
You see, the I've mentioned that some debts which are manageable. Others, I know, like Nigeria, when Obasanjo came to power, Nigeria was choking in debts. What he did was to renegotiate, the debt and reschedule some of the repayment terms. And some other countries were even ready to do some debt write-offs, and so on, and that helped him to be able to end up with a manageable debt to move on.
Okay.
And Nigeria has since that time come back to normalcy.
Okay.
So I don't think that we are over-indebted, given our economy.